Alright, so it is finally time to turn these logs into lumber and get to build an Arabella. So yesterday I had my grandfather help me with the tractor, and we slid the trailer out from underneath the mill here. And now you can see the mill sitting on some 6x6s in the front here, and some 8x8s in the back. And the goal this morning is to get the mill leveled. So I've got a big steel bar, and I can use this to shove the mill around. You put it underneath, jack it right or left. And I've got a bottle jack that I can put underneath to lift the mill up. And then I had a bunch of scrap chunks of lumber of all different sizes and thicknesses that I'm going to wedge underneath these big beams and get the mill perfectly level from side to side and front to back. And then once that's leveled, I can tune it and make sure that the rails are running perfectly straight and that everything's clean and aligned properly. Fill it up with gas and we'll start milling. So it'll probably take a couple hours here to get it leveled and get everything tuned up. And hopefully I'll be milling by lunchtime if all goes well. Alright, so at this point, I've shoved the mill over to where I want it to be. And I've got the bottle jack under the back end, and I've jacked it up so that this end's a little higher than level, so that when I block it and it settles back down, it should be really, really close. So here we have the 4-foot level spanning it. Bubbles almost to the center, it's just a little high on that right side. And we can see the bottle jack holding that up. So we'll put some blocking underneath that beam and set it down and see if we're about level. And if that's good, I'll know how much the center ones need to go up. And we'll repeat the process with those. Alright, so the mill's now leveled, front and back, and I've straightened it so the rails run perfectly straight. And we put in some blocking to keep the mill from shifting to the right or left, and bolted down a plank. And that'll help keep the beams that the mill sits on from getting squirrely, and it also gives a place to walk. So we put in a couple stops here, and then I'm going to roll the log onto the mill. And then these guys are called log dogs. We're going to go in here. Against the log, and you press the handle, and it locks it in against these braces and holds it still while you run down the mill and cut the log up. So we're going to get the mill fired up and start cutting some logs. Alright, so we got all the stickers milled and some 2x4s to stack some lumber on. And the first real beam is coming on, full 14 feet long. Out of that, I'm going to make probably a few stickers, maybe a couple ceiling boards, but the main goal is to get the steam box out of it. So that'll have to be 2 inches thick and as wide of boards as I can get out of it. And we'll set that aside, and that'll become the steam box for when we steam bend all of the ribs for the inside of the boat. So I'm going to film the entire process of rolling this log on and milling it. See if I can get this log up here and get it milled up. So if you notice that log magically stays put when I roll it up, I have 2 wedges made out of just some scrap wood, and I put some grip tape, like what you put on the deck of a skateboard, on the back of it, and a couple screws hammered in just to hold it there. So when I roll the log up, I just tuck one of these in behind it, and it keeps it from rolling back on me. If I had somebody else to help me, we could put 2 people with a PV hook or a cant hook, and one of us would hold it while the other one reset, and we'd roll it on. But when you're by yourself, the wedges work pretty well. Whew. That last little bit getting up onto the mill is always a bit of a push. But now it's on there, and I'm going to go take a look at the end of it and see what it looks like. Kind of trying to tell where the center is and if there looks to be any knots. One side looks better than the other. So the pith is pretty well centered. That's good. And we've got a lot of knots on this right-hand side. So I think I'm going to flip it up so that we slice that side off first. I feel like a lunatic out here talking to a camera. The other thing I need to do is get a lot of this dirt off. So you can see here I already scrubbed some away and get all this cake stuff off. The thick cake dirt's really bad. It really dulls the blades. So we'll do that. Good old wire brush. Would have been really nice to skid these this winter when the ground was frozen and there was snow on it, but the ground was not frozen for most of the winter and we really didn't get any snow, so kind of had to drag them in the mud, which makes for more work. Alright, so that's most of the dirt. So roll it a little bit more. That looks pretty good. Get these braces out of the way so I'm not tripping on them. Lower the stops. You really don't want to hit these with the mill. So if you put them like this angle at the top of the braces, when you roll the log, it has a tendency to hit this angle and then roll off as opposed to rolling up and over. But when you're milling, it's better to have them this way so that you can get them as low as possible and still maintain contact. When we attach the dogs, we do very similar with them. As low as we can get them, but also the wider part of the log. Alright, dogs are set. Put on some eyes and ears, and ready to start slicing this log up. Well, before I do this, so I'm going to crank this handle, and that raises and lowers the mill. And then I'm going to lock it down on these slides. And then I'll start up the mill, and I'll run it through. I'll take the slab off, loosen the slides, lift the mill up a little bit so the blade clears the cut, bring the mill back, and then I'll decide if I'm going to take another cut or if I'm going to roll the log or what I want to do. And I'll leave the mill running the whole time. Alright, so the depth is set, and then I'm going to put my gauge down. And I can set this with, there's a tape measure on this side, and that way, when I make one cut, I know how many inches I want to go down for the next one to make the lumber. So I'll start the mill. flat side sitting on the mill. I measured up to see where I should start my cut. Because otherwise you end up with like a funny half inch or something on the bottom that's kind of unusable. And you end up making an extra cut that you wouldn't have had to make. So I'm going to skim off the top, and then I'm going to take a 1x off, and then I'll have a 10-inch timber, which I can go through and cut into 2-inch layers. So now we have, it's called a cant when it becomes square. So it's 11 inches tall, 10 inches wide, and I want to slice 2-inch thicknesses out of it. So I'm going to roll it one time so that it's 11 inches wide and 10 inches tall, and then I'll go through and knock those into 2x11s, and those will end up becoming a steam box. Alright, so I should have taken a little less, actually given a little more for each of those ones I took off. I wanted to make them a little proud of 2 inches. And I was off just a little bit, so I ended up having to cut a wafer thin piece out to get that bottom one to be 2 inches. But this will be fine, because we'll use it for battens, or this will be great pattern making material. It's a little floppy. And that's it. One log down. I don't even want to know how many to go. So this is what we ended up making out of that log. There's some scrap over there. That's the sapwood in the bark, and that'll become kindling or firewood. And if we come and look over here, we've got our 3 boards that are mostly sapwood that we use for bracing, maybe a little interior work, some pattern making. We have one little thin strip, which would be great for battens and pattern making. And we've got, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 2x10s. So that's great. That's almost all the lumber we need for the steam box. Get one more 2x10, maybe 2 more, and we'll be good to go. Easy peasy.